There you go.
There it is. Okay.
Aha.
Oh, no. It is. There we are. Hello.
Hey, how are you all doing?
Hi, Paul.
Good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
Absolutely. I'm dealing with two pros here. I have nothing to worry about.
At least for 35 minutes.
Hey, are you here? Well, it sure sounds like you are. Welcome. Welcome to episode number 1050 of the Paul Leslie Hour. We're welcoming today Mark Ulano and Patrushkha Mierzwah, two creative talents who have worked behind the scenes in the sound department of some of Hollywood's most iconic motion pictures. Mark is a production sound mixer, and Patrushkha is a boom operator. Now, these cinematic sound professionals, Mark and Patrushkha, have worked with some of the most influential directors of our time. Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, James Cameron, Jon Favreau, Paul Thomas Anderson, Roberto Rodriguez, and JJ Abrams, just to name a few. So, as you're about to hear, this is a very, very special interview, and it's the only thing left to tell you. Well, only that it's starting now. So, enjoy the interview.
Well, it's my great pleasure to be talking with Mark and Patrushkha. They are sound pros, partners in sound and partners in life, I might add. And it's such a pleasure to be able to speak with you for a few moments here. You all are in Boston at the moment?
We're traveling around. It's the holidays.
Okay, very good, very good. I'm going to start with a somewhat big question. What has always been the purpose of the art you create?
To tell stories, Paul. We're filmmakers and we tell stories, and we specialize in a particular instrument of sound. But the way to think about a film crew and how films are made is it's orchestral. So we have a lot of analogy to how an orchestra works. You have passionate artists specializing in their particular instruments coming together to tell the story as a group. So we have a conductor called a director, we have a score called a script, and together we tell the story in a way that connects characters to the audience and the journeys those characters are on and the environment in which they have those journeys. So our part is the emotional, under the radar, connecting with, people through sound. Sound is one of the least understood and least visible tools, but one of the most essential when it comes to telling stories.
Well said.
Oh, thank you.
So you say sound is one of the least understood. That's very interesting to me. Why do you suppose that that's the case?
Because you can't see it. Simply, it's always been a bit of a conundrum of its place in the comprehension of filmmaking from the beginning, and even now out in the larger culture, but even within the industry itself. It's one of those things that is adjacent, collaborative, essential, but not dependent on purely the visual aspect, other than in collaboration with what the visual aspect is doing to tell the story. So we are sort of special teams in that regard. And when you watch us do what we do, you have no idea what we're doing when you watch us, because it's not self-evident the nature of our work when you see it happening. So we're making, hundreds of creative decisions a day. We're in intimate, close quarters with high-profile talent. If it was the music industry, the creative recording producer who is collaborating with the performing artists is performing behind the microphone, if you will. We're doing that, but we're adjacent to 15 or 20 other prominent skills: cinematography, editing, production design, hair and makeup, wardrobe, etc., all sort of coming together to connect the characters to the audience. And if you think about it, storytelling is probably one of the oldest things we do as humans. And I have no evidence to support a speculation I have, which is that it's maybe biological. We tell stories to bring adolescence into adulthood, to remember the history of our culture, to express our aspirations, our morality. All of this is through storytelling, and it's one of those, things that really comes before language, I think, before written language, sitting around a campfire 100,000 years ago. And present day content is, I think, the stewardship of present way of telling stories.
I don't know how you all feel about this, but in terms of interviews that I've shot, for example, I have found that visually, something that you can't go back and reshoot. If the visual is off, it seems like there's so much you can do to kind of make do with what you have. But it seems like when sound is really bad, you're really, you can be really lost. Would you agree with that sentiment?
I think it's a reasonable sentiment. I wouldn't make a broad total generalization about it, because it depends on the specifics. And in the art form that filmmaking is, so much depends on the intent. What's the idea? What's the content? And what elements does the content lean on to best convey the story? And there are some really interesting, unorthodox examples. For example, last year, the Academy Award for Sound went to Zone of Interest, which, I don't know if you're familiar with the film, but it's about a family that is managing a concentration camp, but having a life inside the bubble of their home. But sound is used. We never see what the sound is, but we're hearing the sounds of the concentration camp surrounding their home. And so it's a very powerful use of sound without it being in the conventional way that we apply sound in motion pictures. So in that context, it's a little bit different. How does sound and how does picture, convey? And I think, but I think it's correct. I think sound wrong, information not getting through.
Yeah.
What did they say? What does it mean? Is this a setup for something that gets paid off, in the third act that we hear about in the first act, and so on. So it's really, but it's dependent. What is the idea of the story and how is it being approached?
I think it pulls you outside of a story faster than camera work that maybe has some minor problems or some continuity error. It's the first thing you notice, and I think it's that invisibility. There's a visceral response. We provide the emotional content of the character's journey, and that's if we do it well, or if we're allowed to do it well, then the audience is brought into that story.
That's right. That's right.
Well stated. So I'd like to hear from both of you on this one. What would you say, or who would you say, has been the greatest teacher in learning this art and science of sound in film?
Oh, that's easy. I'm going to start. I really didn't go to school for this, and it's a very specialized kind of education, and it's so many different areas that you need to know about to do sound in production. But I came from another department, which is not uncommon, and I came from theater before that, so it was a natural transition in my mind. But sound I knew nothing about. And I met Mark on a movie many moons ago, and I was not feeling comfortable in the department I was at, and I thought there was something I was better suited for. I just didn't know what it was. And he's just a natural teacher, and he takes on trainees, apprentices. And so I worked under Mark and developed my personal aesthetics along with finding I'm in sync with his general aesthetics.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate about that partnership, by the way. Today is our 42nd year.
It is today.
Today is our wedding. It's actually our wedding anniversary. We're together 44 years, and we're
sorry.
I still think it's going to work out, but I'm recklessly optimistic. So, in mentorship throughout my life, starting from my high school days, And I had a very aware and alert, head of the art department in high school. My father is a prominent musician, teacher, writer in the music world. So I kind of had that DNA of being around the idea of creating community, of teaching is the best way to stay, relevant in your own specialty. Be a student always, be careful about the concept of mastering. Segovia was still practicing in his 90s to stay relevant, to stay physically able with his instrument. It's like athletes, it's like musicians and artists of all stripes. And so the best teacher is actually in the field and dealing with solutions and creating solutions on a constant, moment to moment basis. When you watch a movie, Paul, every shot is handmade. It's three people in a documentary or 300 on a 10-pole picture and everything in between, but it's a group of creatives trying to make this particular moment fit inside the scene fit inside the other scenes, and the whole thing come together as a story.
Well, congratulations to you guys. I had no idea that it was such a. I feel very fortunate to get you on a day like today.
We're squeezing you in.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Today was actually a very complex schedule, all well and good, very good things done, but it was jam-packed with,
the end of the year. You've got this list of things you have to do, you should do, you want to do. It's the holidays,
that's
and
right.
it's all good.
It's all good.
Both personally and collectively, what film have you worked on that you thought, especially from a sound standpoint, this was a knockout, this was a home run?
It's an interesting question. It's a challenge for me because I'm an old dog. I've done 150 or more movies over 40. I guess it's since my teenage years, since almost 50 years. So it's hard to answer that without thinking in terms of the stage of life and the particular project. But there have been some films that really stand out for me in not just in my personal experience of the journey of working on them, but in the outcome of the films. And some of them you might think might be a little less known. We did a film with JJ Abrams called Super 8. It was a sci-fi alien monster film, but it was a brilliant sort of, ensemble of young teenagers. And JJ, I think it's one of his best pieces of work. People know him for many other things, but I have a great love for that film. Titanic was a very big deal, enormous challenge, grueling production experience, but incredibly giving in that it brought all of us to our maximum potential beyond maybe what we even knew about ourselves to achieve it. And then I've had a really good blessing in terms of some of the collaborations I've been welcomed to and invited to. 30 years with Quentin Tarantino, and that evolution has been mutual. I think he's a specific kind of voice in our time and complex, but even his films are not of one note. We did a film together early on called Jackie Brown, which was a very courageous choice to make after his big splash with Pulp Fiction, because Jackie Brown is a love story between two middle-aged, fringe of the society characters, and how they work through, basically a Elmore Leonard murder mystery. But it's sort of a tough thing to answer your question in a singularity. I can't. Kill Bill was 9 months, 4 countries, and a joy to be a part of, all through it. I love James Gray. We did Ad Astra together a few years ago. And last year was Marty Scorsese. We did Killers of the Flower Moon, which is, the privilege to work with an iconic filmmaker in the full-blown passion of his, he was 81 and as vital as anyone could be in that process. I guess you see what I mean. It's
Yeah.
the flow. It's nice to stand in front of a lot of people and get recognized if you should be awarded something, but the real reward is to get to do the thing. You're doing what you love to do day in, day out, year in, year out. That's a really special thing, and I'm very grateful for that, because I found early what I love to do, and it's rewarded me in many ways.
What about you, Patrushkha?
I think it's a little easier for me. I am very fond of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, me too.
It was fun. Every craft is appreciated. I've never had that much interaction with a director, and with Quentin being right on the set, most directors just sit with a little TV screen away from the actors and watch their movies on a little screen. And Quentin doesn't do that. He's just right there next to camera, which is how I learned, many decades ago. It's how we did it before there was video, and it's nice. It's we're right there together, and we had a lot of collaboration, particularly the Spawn Ranch sequence, because there was a small commercial airport, a small airport nearby. And we had a lot of airplane traffic. And so we were looking at each other constantly, assessing while the performance was going on. And I really appreciated that I was contributing on that level, as well as just, capturing Brad Pitt on a microphone.
Yeah. Quentin's somebody who appreciates the contribution. He surrounds himself with a repertoire company of like-minded film crazies. And it creates a kind of unique atmosphere, really, in that it's got a purity to it. We've worked with a lot of different people over a lot of years, but in that circumstance, you really, you're sort of in the idealized version of why you're doing this in the first place. And there's no camps. It's not about the market. It's not about the money. It's about, we love making movies. That's what it's about. And you get to have that exercise that muscle with that director. There are other directors like that as well, but Quentin is his own
very
producer.
joyous about the whole thing. He's excited.
Yeah.
We're making a movie. We're doing what we love. Let's celebrate that. And we do.
We do.
It's a great group of people. A lot of us get together between movies, for birthday parties and life events. It's really kind of a family
creative friendships
event,
and that's very true. It's very true.
And I think there's something when a director appreciates you and welcomes you to do your best and lets everybody know that every department is to be respected, and there's something. Quentin's movies, in my opinion, are just more than other movies. And I don't know what it is about them. They're just
a personal experience, yeah.
Well, but even when you're in the audience, there's something
going on.
There's something more going on, and they're more lively, they're more whatever they are. They're more proppy, they're more soundy. I don't know what it is, but when everybody is so excited and valued, it brings something, that little extra.
He has we talked about this, and he has a commitment to entertaining.
I'm entertained while I'm working.
Yeah, he likes to entertain personally and with his films. They're not everybody's cup of tea, certainly, but he has that energy to, respect the audience really in his own, way. And I think that's it's pretty old school. He operates old school on the set. Like Patrushkha said, there's no video village. He's in close quarters with the actors and the director of photography and us, and you have a sense of sort of the overview. The holistic overview is part of the process. Everyone has to have read the script if they're going to work on his film, and you respect the sacred space between the actor and the directors. No telephones allowed on the set. That would
nice.
It is nice. It's very respectful, and the work shows it, I think.
Yeah.
Well, that's so interesting. The first time I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I watched it with my wife, and my wife has accused me at times of being overly obsessed with sound. And I said to her, what's that?
It's not a bad thing.
Well, no, it's not.
You're talking to check out your
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, when a very nice man, Marco, when he sent me an email with the idea of interviewing you two, immediately I thought, yes, I want to talk to those two. But about the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood thing, after we finished watching it, I turned to her and I said, "That was such a great movie." And I said, "I even like the way it sounds. Like at times it's crunchy, the way the music on the radio, it kind of marries at times to the sound of the wind, because it would be windy if you're in a car, all these different things." And I like the way you say it, like the Quentin Tarantino's films, they're soundy.
Terrible way to say it, but you know what I mean.
He
I
does
do.
have some very not unorthodox, but let me say it better. He has some very old school approaches to how sound is treated in his films. It's less about the sound and more about performance fundamentally. He does not replace dialogue. If there are issues on the set, he won't leave the shot unless he's got it, both picture and sound. That's very unusual. Music is a key thing for him in terms of conceptualizing what he's going to do before he gets there to do it. You noticed in Hollywood that the music evolved. Normally, I get a script, 5 or 6 months ahead of time, so I could start sort of thinking and preparing and all that the way that key creatives do. On Hollywood, I got a jump drive with about 48 hours of log tapes from late 1960s AM radio in Los Angeles, and it was about the vibe of that time and that place. And subsequently, in post production, those different tracks of that music from that period that sets the time. Sorry, we got 4 dogs there,
Sorry.
and they're playing in the back.
I'll go get them a treat.
And there were 8 levels of how that sound of that music was being experienced by the audience, whether it was the level that the characters themselves were experiencing, a 3-inch speaker in a car while we're driving, versus it transitioning into being under score and underneath and back and forth. And it was all about driving the emotional power of the music to set the table for what was happening in the scenes. There's a lot of thought that goes into that. And there's a collaboration too. What I do is, and there's 3 main disciplines for telling the story with sound. There's the primary first step, which is what I am focused on, called the production sound, capturing original performances, environment, and effects. Then there's once pictures lock, the sound editors that bring their magic forward to bring diverse additional elements, enhancement. And then finally, there's what's called a re-recording mixing, which ties it all together into a singularity so that when the audience sees it, they're not feeling any of those work marks. They're just invited to believe, invited to invest in the story and in the characters, and let go of the fact that it's in a physical, artificial, technical medium, but that we want to persuade the audience to buy in, to go on the ride, enjoy, participate.
Here it is in the middle of this episode, the Paul Leslie Hour. We're going to take just a quick moment to ask a favor. Won't you subscribe to Paul's YouTube channel? I'm sure if you do, you will be one happy person. And above all else, following Paul on X, formerly known as Twitter, at the Paul Leslie. And remember to say hi to Paul. Now, back to the show.
Is there a most overlooked element to good sound in a movie?
Well, there's more than one answer to that question, because is that overlooked during the actual making of the movie, overlooked by audience who are not aware, overlooked by how exhibition takes place? We're in a very unique era, where there, for a long time, there was a single way people would experience a movie: in a dark room with strangers on a large screen in theater. Well, you can just as easily see Lawrence of Arabia on your iPhone these days, and it's not how David Lean intended you to see that movie, but it's a true thing. So how we miss that is really tied to who's in the director's seat. What is the idea, the concept of how the audience is supposed to get this experience? How are they going to have characters revealed to them? How is it written? So sound is a very plastic kind of tool for that. Many times it's used to precursor, foreshadow something that's coming later subtly. In conjunction, we do that with lenses, and we do that with microphones. In lenses, you have things like depth of field and focal lengths, and they all have particular meanings and indication. We might start a movie with a very shallow depth of field. As the character becomes more clear about his or her circumstance, that depth of field might go deeper and deeper, revealing. It's not something that you're going to see, in the subtitles, but it's a subtle expression creatively of the story. And we do that with sound. We, in the most simple terms, I move back and forth between first person and third person. Is it something that we're experiencing as if we were a character in the room with those characters? Or at the other extreme, are we observers, flies on the wall? And we move back and forth in that way because that's the way the story is unfolding, so that the audience is getting information that has a point of view, the director's point of view, the writer's point of view, and how the actors take that idea and interpret it in performance.
And the character's point of view.
And the character's point
So
of view.
that's how you'll experience
That's
the
right.
story.
That's right.
I actually want to respond to that question.
Sure.
I think what's overlooked during production is how easy it is to get good sound right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that it's cheaper than trying to replace it at the back end. When you have the actors there, you have the environment, everybody's in their character. It's very easy to, make a noise go away, or, usually it's noises at locations, or, and they think, oh, we'll just do that later. But renting a facility, flying in an actor, asking them 6 or 10 months from now to recreate that performance, it can be done, and there are some actors who like to work that way, but it
depends.
Very easy to do it right there. And if you want to change something later, you can always do that.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that directors still don't grasp the economics of that.
It's not well taught in film university context. There's many, the film programs in university today are sort of like the creative writing programs in the 1950s. It's an extremely popular and successful business proposition for universities and schools. And generally, people who go into those projects, I say they're the broad brush, but are seeking to be directors or producers or writers or cinematographers and sometimes editors. But they don't necessarily have in their curriculum a real sort of recognition of the importance of sound as a creative part of the palette. And it's sort of like, pregnancy, it's a natural thing. And sound is not a necessary evil. It's part of the creative choices that can really helps the story progress in the way that, the idea presents. So that's kind of why I teach. I think it's important to communicate. I don't just teach people who are coming into the sound trade, the sound art form, but I also speak very specifically to emerging directors in graduate programs or even undergraduate about their access to sound as a storytelling tool, and to not ignore that, because there are many pressures. A director is under enormous pressure for information, for making the day, for the economics and all the rest of that. And it's easy to lose sight of some of the primary tools that directors have for succeeding with connecting to their audience. And so I'm an evangelist for that aspect, for, don't give up your piece of the territory to tell your story because, you haven't quite gotten your arms around what it takes to do that. And it's really about leadership in that position. Leadership isn't about micromanaging and ultra control over every little thing. Leadership's about proper delegation to great allies, great practitioners that can understand your idea and use their best experience and facility to fluently interpret that through their tools. So the cinematographer, who's a great cinematographer, is not repeating what he or she does every movie. They're interpreting each movie in its own unique needs. We do the same thing. And a good director, my prejudice anyway, a good director understands this leadership process of delegation versus the idea that I'm in siege and under war, I'm in combat and I'm fighting through the elements just to get through my day, as opposed to the joy of having a great repertoire company or an orchestra or a band or an athletic team, whatever, to to be the complete support that I need so that I can focus on the real meat and potatoes, which is, working with my actors and designing how the frames are going to be. All of the director's tools, we're part of that.
So we're just about to roll into another year. What is on the horizon with Mark and Patrushka?
Who knows? The thing about film work is that for the most part, it's freelance, and that takes a certain getting used to. You don't learn that in high school, how to manage your life.
Yeah. That said, we have been asked to do Quentin's next movie. The start has changed, so when that will be is not exactly obvious to us right now, but that's our next, larger project on deck. In the meantime, we are each into our own thing. I love to go teach and do workshops, and I write quite a bit, and I participate in the leadership side of things at the Academy, and
Of motion picture
of
arts
motion
and
picture art,
sciences.
yeah, and also I had a history as a union leader. I was the president of the Sound Local for 15 years in Los Angeles, and I'm participating mostly in creative aspects of teaching and legacy. I want to leave some piece of what is pretty much an esoteric endeavor, demystified and nurture and encourage people to, embrace the enjoyment of it. It's a really fun thing to do. If you're psychologically built to live in a perpetual state of uncertainty. And also we're in our community, the filmmaking community is basically a very large group of highly unstable personalities that come together to tell stories with deep passion and commitment. And I say that with a smile, but art is challenging, alone or together. There's great intensity, which really is, the spice of life. You're doing something that matters, that you care to do, and that fulfills you, is one of, I think, the great secrets of having a happy life, So,
What are you up to, Paul?
Let me just, we also make documentaries. I direct and Patrushka produces, and the title of our last documentary is "I Love What I Do," and it's a journey. It's a journey into it's in the music world. It's tied to my father and his life in his professional world and the family interaction, and it's a meditation on balancing the obsessive nature of pursuing an artistic life, and how does that fit into the rest of your life, showing up for your marriage, your kids, your health, etc. It's a constantly, exciting kind of, challenge, because we tend to be obsessive in the arts. And if I don't know if you've, edited, you must have done some editing if you're doing podcasts. You could start in the morning at 8 o'clock, and the next thing you know, it's 3 a.m, and time has flown by because you're in a different space. That's kind of the food in art, is that it transcends, time in a way, and that can be dangerous.
I'd love to see that. Absolutely. And it's,
Okay, we can put that together at some point, sure.
thank you. It's markandpatrushka.com, correct?
That's correct. That's our
Okay.
website.
So one of the cool things about having done this show for a number of years, being able to talk to people that are making their first film, and also people who've made many. But I know that there's all types like that who are listening to this, people who are getting into cinema making at different angles. So just in our last moment here, what would you say to anybody who is in this business?
Be a nice person.
That's not a bad
That will
idea.
get you very far in life.
Yeah.
And it does in the film business, because the hours are grueling and personalities can range all over the human rainbow. So I think stay centered. Don't lose your humanity.
Or your sense of humor, and stay focused on getting good at your thing. Be committed. Spencer Tracy, I'll paraphrase, was famous for saying that he takes his work very seriously, but he tried not to take himself too seriously. And that's kind of a good balance. But mainly stay a student is what I would recommend. Be passionate about always learning. Don't the minute you think you've got this work done, you're in trouble because your antenna stopped receiving the new. The tools for us, for example, are in a constant shifting, tidal wave of new information, and how to learn that, always keep learning, but to apply it to your fundamental core intent. So be a student, be serious about it, be respectful, and be, like Patrushka says, be a nice person, but also set goals. And I suggest you write them down, because somehow magically, if you write stuff down, it happens, most of the time. But those are sort of, and don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid, actually. Fear and anger will block your thinking, but failure cannot cope with persistence, is what my father would say. And I subscribe to that idea.
Mark, Patrushka, take a bow. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
This was great.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meaning.
Great. Is it?
Yeah, Toby just came in all wet.
Oh, that's
He's
why
just usually he's not this excited, but I don't know. Your voice.
I will tell you something, and this is the honest truth. There is nothing that I like more than when a dog or cat comes into the picture.
Oh.
I just love it. It's just fun to me. It's like there have been times I've talked to somebody.
Office, I got to tell you, during the interview, two dogs came under. Where am I? Two dogs came under. We were talking. Also, I had to give them treats. They went through those rawhide strips like nobody's business. I don't know where the others are.
They're around.
Oh, there's one. Hey, Dakota, love you.
Now, do I have permission to air this part?
This part,
What, the dog part?
the dog part, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we're not shy.
I don't have to get any release forms for them.
You can send your paw print on a page.
Well, thank you so much, folks.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Take care, Paul.
All right. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
The Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you, listeners, viewers. Please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.